that, no, I forget where I was going with that. Crap. I had a thought, and I think it was brilliant, but it is fully left me now. There's your outtake for the episode.
Pistols, prayer, and potluck. This is Armed Lutheran Radio.
Hi, folks. Welcome to Armed Lutheran Radio, a podcast about guns, about competitive shooting, about hunting, about the natural right of self-defense, and most importantly, about God's Word and what God's Word tells us about the issues, moral and ethical issues surrounding gun ownership and gun rights. I'm your host, Lloyd Bailey, the Armed Lutheran, and this is episode number 226. Thank you so much for making Armed Lutheran Radio a part of your week again this week. Before we get started, I want to thank some awesome people who are making this show possible, the members of the Reformation Gun Club. Armed Lutheran Radio is listener-funded, and that means that we rely on the monthly contributions of our members, the members of the Reformation Gun Club. And I want to give them a shout-out today to a handful of these awesome people, Stephen and Sue and Eric and Catherine and Turbo1889 and David and Steve, Gordon, Daniel, and our newest member, Terry. Thank you all so much for your support, especially in these crazy economic times. I really do appreciate it. It really goes a long way to helping us pay for all the things that we need to keep things going, software and hosting and equipment. And you can join these awesome people for as little as $1 a month. Like I said, it really does help us a lot, and we really do appreciate it. We have lots of great benefits. Early access to the show each week, exclusive content, some really neat Armed Lutheran swag. Check it out at armedlutheran.us/gun club. All right, this week is another of our variety shows. For those of you who are new to the show, normally we alternate every other week. We have content from all of our cast members. One week, our variety show, and then every other week we have Clinging to God and Guns with myself and Pastor John Bennett. We haven't been able to do that lately because of some home repair issues, but we've been doing the variety shows every other week for the last few weeks. Thank you for your patience. I appreciate it. Mia is sharing some interesting info today about the most commonly purchased firearms during this current crazy turmoil and pandemic we're having around the country, where people are buying guns for the first time in large numbers. 40% of all of the new gun purchases during this this craziness has been new gun owners, not people adding to their collections, but people who are buying guns for the first time. And Mia has some really interesting info about those choices, some things that might help you decide if you're looking to buy a new gun or your first gun. Sergeant Bill is with us talking about training frequency in his Ballistic Minute this week, not just about how often you train, but how often you train the different aspects of your skills. And Pastor Bennett has an epic rant this week about the National Museum of African American History and Culture and their insanely racist idea that certain things, that if you're black and you value family or faith or self-reliance or justice, you're just trying to be white. It's a really strange way to bring the country together, but hey, that's what we do in this country nowadays. We just keep on dividing. Before we start, I do want to thank everybody. I mentioned briefly why we've been doing every other week for the last few weeks. I want to thank everybody who's reached out and shared a positive thought or a prayer for me and my family. We, for those who don't know, that my house flooded and while we were on vacation, and so we've been dealing with repairs and my family being back in North Carolina and me here in Texas. Well, we finally got all back together this past week, and we were apart for about a month, and the temporary housing finally came through, and so we're all together now in Texas. The repairs got started this week. I was over at the house checking on things yesterday. Looks like they've got drywall done. They're ready to start retexturing and repainting. The big thing we're told is going to be doors and cabinets. Cabinets are probably going to be at least a month, probably more like 6 weeks. The doors are delayed by, guess what? COVID-19. The door company apparently had a couple of workers who tested positive for the virus, and then as a result of all the media hype and the panic porn, most of the company's employees just stopped coming to work. They were too scared to come to work. And so the company had to hire new people just to stay in business and to fulfill orders for their customers. So they're at least 3 weeks out from actually delivering doors to my house. So we're in this temporary situation for at least another month, probably more like 2, possibly as long as 3. We'll see. But speaking of COVID-19, do you get the feeling, based on my recent experience, what I just mentioned about the door company and a couple of other things that have happened recently, do you get the feeling that companies are just using this virus as an excuse to cut costs and avoid providing decent service? I ordered internet services from a company who shall remain nameless, but their acronym sounds like those Imperial walkers in the Star Wars movies. For those of you who have seen the movies, you'll know who I'm talking about. Well, just like the Galactic Empire, this company doesn't seem to care much for the little guy. They shipped my new equipment to the wrong address. I got a notice that had been delivered, but it wasn't at my house. So where it was delivered, they didn't say. So I had to contact the shipper, another international conglomerate with an acronym that sounds a lot like a Disney movie about an old guy in a house that flies and a talking dog. Anyway, I called their customer service and I got this automated voice telling me that basically what I already knew, my package was delivered. And then because my package was delivered successfully and because of COVID-19, they were not going to connect me with a real person and they disconnected the call. Well, I found out that the package had actually been delivered to the new address before we were able to move in. Thank goodness the previous tenants, the owners of the house, didn't return it. They picked it up, brought it in the house, and left it for us. But then once I got here and started setting up the internet, I couldn't get the internet to work. So I needed tech support for that. So I called tech support, and I already have service with this company at the house that's been flooded. So I just added a second account, one for this temporary home that we're currently in. I could not find my account number for the new account. So when I called, the automated voice said, well, I could access the account using my phone number. Okay, that should make it easy. So I gave them the phone number. And once they had that info, they wanted to know what the call was about. And I told them tech support, and I told them that the internet wasn't working. And this disembodied voice told me that they were going to run a bunch of checks to see if they could determine the issue. If you've ever called the cable company and told them the internet was down and they wouldn't actually connect you to a tech support person, this is exactly the same thing. It runs a bunch of checks and wastes a bunch of your time telling you what you already know, that your internet's not working. Well, in this case, it ran a bunch of checks and beep, 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 beep. 1 moment. Beep, 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 beep. 1 moment. Beep, beep, beep. Oh, our internet test has determined that your internet is working properly and you've got speeds of X and download speeds of Y. And as a result of this test, and because of COVID-19, we are not going to connect you to tech support. Have a nice day. Go jump in a lake. All right, that last was a bit of an exaggeration. They just hung up on me. And no matter what I tried, I could not get past that electronic gatekeeper. I finally tried to tell them that I wanted to cancel, figuring that word, cancel my service, would trigger them connecting me to a real person. But no, the office was closed for the day. So they told me to call back and hung up. So I finally got it straightened out, but it got me thinking, what does COVID-19 have to do with tech support? In this world where we rely so heavily on tech, how hard is it at this point for a multinational company that involves itself in tech. How hard is it for them to set up their tech support from, employees working from home? I guess it's easier to furlough a bunch of people and automate everything and cut costs. But I don't know. Don't get me started on the whole mask thing either. I mean, if masks are so effective, why close your business? Why furlough workers? Why not just require all your employees to wear masks and get back to work? Anyway, so I'm a little frustrated by customer service lately, which apparently has become the latest victim of the coronavirus. RIP customer service, dead 2020 apparently. Anyway, we finally got settled into the house. We're all together. Repairs have started. Things are looking up. The house we're in is huge and it echoes like crazy. So I'm sitting right now sweating in my car in my garage, recording because I get better audio here. There's just nowhere for me to get good audio in that house yet. I've still got to figure out what I can do for a temporary studio kind of setup. And we'll see how this works next week. Hopefully we'll try to get a Clinging to God and Gun show with myself and Pastor Bennett for next week. Hopefully I can figure out a temporary recording space that's suitable for that. Thank you again for all of your prayers and support, especially for those of you members of the Reformation Gun Club who continue to support us financially. I really do appreciate all the well wishes, and with any luck, we'll be back on track with weekly shows starting again next week in episode 227. So sit back and enjoy the rest of this show, and I will talk to you next week.
Time now for Mia's Motivations with Mia Anstein.
Hey guys, it's Mia here again. Happy to be talking to you as always. I'm blessed to be able to have another moment to share with you. And today I wanted to do something a little bit different. I wanted to kind of take a step away from all the doom and gloom and crazy stuff that's going on. As an outdoor writer, I'm a member of the National Shooting Sports Foundation, and I receive reports from them. And so this one I wanted to share with you. I also wanted to kind of share with you what's been happening from January 1st to May 31st of 2020, since the COVID pandemic has been going on and the unrest in our country has been going on. There's been a lot of gun sales. And so I wanted to kind of share this information as maybe inspiration, but also so you know what's going on in our country as far as gun sales. Recently, I've had a lot of people getting in touch with me asking what gun they should buy their daughter, what gun they should buy their wife, and that sort of thing. And so I thought maybe this will help a little bit. Today, I want to talk to you about handguns, and I do have statistics regarding shotguns and rifles as well. And I'll share those in a future episode because hunting season is right around the corner and we need to get ready and prepared with those firearms. So when we're looking at gun sales across the country, they've been just skyrocketing, but there are 3 states that make the top 3 in gun sales, both for revolvers and for semi-auto. And number 1 is Texas, number 2 is Florida, and number 3 is Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania surprised me a little bit because I feel like the news doesn't report a lot on that. It's a bit of a sleeper. If you look further down the report, we've got Ohio, Illinois, Virginia, Arizona, California. And so I expected some of those, but I guess, as I said, Pennsylvania is a bit of a sleeper. So I didn't really expect that to be so high on the list. When we're looking at this, their report breaks these guns down into the top 10 revolvers and the top 10 semi-automatic pistols. And it also breaks it down in those 2 categories. It breaks it to the people that are under 50 purchasing guns and the people that are 50 and over that are purchasing guns. So I want to tell you a bit about both of them, just to give you an idea of what handgun you may want to get, or if you're looking for one for someone in your life that they may want to get. Ideally, if you're going to look at these guns, it would be great to go to a range and be able to try before you buy. So if you have a way to do that, I do highly recommend getting your hands on those, touching them, feeling them, and shooting them. If you don't have a means to do that, then by all means ask at the gun store if you're able to handle and dry fire those so you can get a feel for the trigger and the grip and so forth. So if we're looking at the top 10 revolvers and in the categories of under 50 or 50 and over, it is very interesting to me that the top 3 revolvers are the same in both sides. In the 50 and under, the Ruger Wrangler is first. In the 50 and over, the Colt Python is first. But we have the Ruger Wrangler, the Colt Python, and then the Smith & Wesson 642. So those are revolvers that a lot of people are out purchasing, and it's something that you may want to try to get a range day scheduled to go try. And if we move into the report about the semi-automatic pistols, again, the under 50 category and then 50 and over category. The top 3 on the under 50, we've got Sig Sauer P320 comes in at number 1, Glock G19 number 2, and then the Springfield Hellcat is number 3. This one, we do have a bit of overlap because we have the P320 as 1 and Hellcat as 2 in the 50 and over category, but number 3 on their list is the Smith & Wesson M&P Shield. So those are guns, they're all tried and true and some that you may be interested in. If you have shot any of these or if you have a favorite, I would love to hear about them. I would love a range report. Let me know what you liked, what you didn't like, and whether you bought one or not. That would be something that I would be very interested in hearing about and learning more. So contact me over in the Reformation Gun Club or on the Fans of Armed Lutheran page or on my social media outlets, Mia Ann Stein, on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And you can check me out there. I hope you find that information helpful and I hope to hear more from you. I will be sharing some more information regarding hunting rifles and shotguns and also some tips to get prepared for hunting season. So I will talk to you next time. Bye, guys.
You can read more from Mia, watch her YouTube videos, or check out her podcast, Mac Outdoors with Mia and Leah at miaanstein.com. Time now for another Ballistic Minute with Sergeant Bill Sylvia.
Hey everybody, I'm Sergeant Bill and this is your Ballistic Minute. Today I want to talk to you about training frequency. When I say training frequency, I don't mean how often you train, but how often you train the skills for shooting. So it doesn't matter if you're doing competition shooting or if you're doing defensive shooting training. There's a lot of skills involved in either one of them. Whether it's drawing from a holster or from concealment, firing multiple shots quickly and accurately, transitioning between targets, doing reloads. The list goes on, and we've covered a lot of these individually in previous Ballistic Minutes. So when you're talking about specific skills, there are things that you should know whether you're good at them or you're just kind of medium or they need a lot of improvement, aka you suck at that. So you need to do that self-assessment at what you're good at and what you're not good at and the things that are in the middle. So after you've done that, take that specific skill, whatever it may be, that you're not very good at. And that's the type of thing that you need to practice more often because you'll get better at it. A good example would be weak hand shooting. Weak hand shooting for most people is really difficult and not a lot of fun, and most people aren't very good at it. And I fall into that category, but I try to dry fire practice it and live fire practice it pretty often because I'd like to get better at it because it is a weakness and it's a skill that I suck at. And then at the opposite end of the spectrum are the things that you're good at. So maybe you're really good at a draw to first shot and you've got, just a ridiculously good draw. Well, that's something that you don't really need to practice a lot. You still need to practice it to keep that skill at the level that it's at, but it doesn't need a lot of attention. Now, there's a lot of stuff that usually for most people will fall in the middle, and those are the medium things. And those medium things you need to practice, well, obviously, a medium amount. So you're pretty good at them, but you're not great, you're not bad. Just keep working on those at a medium level. So you're working on the things you're not very good at a lot, the medium stuff, a medium amount, and then the things you're good at a little bit less because you're already good at them. You don't need a lot of reps to really get better at them. Now, there's also a training loop for when you learn new skills or you're trying to change a skill. Now, I add in changing a skill because say you're doing a draw and your grip is not very good, but you got it down pretty well, but you want to change it because you're changing your grip, so you've got to change the way you draw the gun out of the holster. Well, that's basically like learning a new skill. You kind of have to start over and make it something you practice a lot at. So in that training loop, you've got your new skills. You're never done or you just learned them. And so you need to practice them and practice them and practice them until they become a learned skill, which is you're able to do it in isolation and do pretty well at it so that it becomes one of your medium skills. And then you can work it until it becomes a skill that you review, which is still kind of a medium deal. You're able to do it sort of on command, on the timer every time. You might have some bobbles here and there, but for the most part, you've got it down. And then when you reach a point that you've continued to practice it and you've gotten really good at it, it becomes a fundamental skill. So that's your training loop. When you get to that fundamental skill, that's the things that you're good at. You don't need to practice a lot, but it needs to be something that you've gotten really good at that you can do on command pretty much any time you want to do it. So the whole reason for me talking about this today is most people don't break down their training to the level that they need to, where they work on the things that they're not good at, or they go to change something and they just do it, and they don't really think about the process involved in how they learn the skill and get better at that skill and make it an unconscious fundamental skill. Using this training loop and training in this certain technique where you're training the things you're not very good at a lot, and on the opposite end of the spectrum, training the things that you're good at not nearly as much, just a little bit, to keep that edge sharp, will help you to take any technique, anything that you learn or you want to get better at, and get you better at it quicker and make it more of a unconscious ability, so you don't have to think about the draw and the steps or think about a reload. Okay, go grab my mag and drop the other magazine, and you just do it without that conscious thought. It just happens, and that's the skill level that you want to get to. A draw shouldn't be thought through. A reload shouldn't be thought through. A transition shouldn't be a thought of, okay, I'm done shooting this target, I need to move over to this other target. You should just be doing it automatically, pretty much without thought, without conscious thought. So take a look at your training, see what you need to work on, and use this training loop to help get you better at the things that you're not very good at. Using this training techniques, you can get better. It'll stop you from going to the range or doing dry fire and just hammering away at the things that you're good at and wasting time. Go to the range, do live fire, and practice the things you're not good at, and utilize that time to get better instead of just continuing to just make noise and shoot ammo. I'm Sergeant Bill. This has been your Ballistic Minute.
Sergeant Bill Sylvia is a veteran of the Dallas Police Force and a masterclass competitive shooter. You can check out his YouTube videos at armedlutheran.us/Sergeant Bill. It's time for Pastoral Pontifications with Pastor John Bennett.
Hello, folks. Welcome to another segment of Pastoral Pontifications. This is Pastor John Bennett, the pistol packing padre, and today it's more of the Reverend's rant, so buckle up and let's get going. perhaps by now, and unless you've been living under a rock or you're not on social media, which if you're not on social media, how would you know about this show to begin with? But I'm sure by now you have seen the National Museum of African American History and Culture's Aspects and Assumptions of Whiteness and White Culture in the United States. Yes, that is the title of they had posted on their museum's website. And as we look at this list, we see things that are objectively good, inherently good. We see the basic building blocks of Western civilization, of a civil society, and yet we have the National Museum of African American History and Culture defining these things as aspects of whiteness. The ironic part of all this is that the museum was trying to be all woke and social justice-y, and in the long run, they turned out to be a bunch of racists. No surprise there. Because the assumption, as you look at this list of things that are very well and good for society, the obvious conclusion is then, well, by exhibiting these things, you are somehow mimicking that evil white culture, and that these characteristics are foreign to your culture if you're not white. So let's go through the list one by one and see if there's anything actually wrong with what they are saying is quote-unquote aspects and assumptions of whiteness and white culture. Well, the first is rugged individualism, that the individual is independent and not relying upon others for their basic necessities. And this is being labeled as an aspect of whiteness. So what, is it better then to be reliant upon the government, to not be able to provide for yourself and for your loved ones? That seems to be what is being implied by this graphic. The next one, family structure, and this is a huge one. Lloyd and I have talked many, many times about the problems of violence within inner city communities. And if any of our listeners, any of our audience, if you are African American and you would like to give us some feedback on this, I would love to hear your thoughts. So this infographic is listing the nuclear family, in other words, father, mother, and children, as being a quote-unquote aspect and assumption of whiteness and white culture. That children are to be respectful of their parents, that there's to be this nuclear family where there's a father and a mother. Now, as I had started to go there, and I hadn't quite gotten there yet, as Lloyd and I have often discussed, one of the biggest problems, at least from our perspective, that we see within many of these communities where there is a lot of gang violence, is that there is no father in the home for many of those young men. Would it be better for the African American community if every home had a mother and father, and that the children had a male role model in the home? Or is this just an aspect, an assumption of whiteness and white culture? And if you want to have a father in the home, is it then you're quote unquote acting white? So yes, this one on the family structure, that's a big one. This is something that is well and good for society. This shouldn't be considered a quote-unquote aspect of whiteness, but this should be what every family should strive to have a father, to have a mother, because that's what children need. That's what society needs. And the family is the basic building block of civilized society. So let's go on to the next one that they list. Emphasis on the scientific method, and they give here under that classification rational linear thinking, cause and effect relationships. In other words, the basic use of logic and science. Are you saying that this is something that is completely foreign to the African American community, you folks at the National Museum for African American History and Culture? Because if you are, that sounds kind of racist. It sounds like you're kind of denigrating African American people. So maybe it's time that cancel culture comes for the National Museum on African American History and Culture. The next one, history. And the infographic points out Judeo-Christian traditions. In Judeo-Christian traditions, we have a lot of morals and ethics that are built into society. Are you saying these things aren't good for the world? Let's go on to Protestant work ethic. Hard work is the key to success. Well, that's pretty logical if you ask me, because if you aren't working, you're probably not getting the paycheck. And I hate to bring up any statistics here because I guess I'd just be emphasizing the scientific method and showing my whiteness according to this infographic. But if you look at statistics under Donald Trump, and of course, you have to discount the period from when all of this pandemic happened and the economy was shut down. But prior to this pandemic, African American unemployment was at an all-time low, a record low, for the first time since these statistics have been tracked in our nation's history, that were more African Americans working and earning a living than there were prior to that. I guess because there's a white man in the White House that African Americans are then exhibiting whiteness. Well, no, that's not how it works. Again, bringing up statistics, it was with the introduction of government welfare systems that unemployment skyrocketed, that single motherhood was on the rise within African American communities, and these are things that aren't good for society regardless of your skin color. It's not good to have people within your community out of work. It's not good for people in your community for there to be no father in the home. So to the National Museum of African American History and Culture, I'm sorry, but you're acting kind of racist with this one. Are you assuming then that if you are not white, that you shouldn't think that hard work and earning a living is a good thing? Okay, enough of that. Let's go on to the next one. And for me, of course, being a pastor, obviously, this is the biggest one. Religion, Christianity is the norm. I missed the part where Christianity was born out of white culture. If you know anything about history, if you know anything about the Bible, Christianity springs out of the Middle East. Aren't a lot of white people there last time I checked. What is also deeply ironic and really insulting about this is that in the continent of Africa, there are more Christians in Africa than there are in the United States. In fact, the first Christians, the first nation to really become a quote-unquote Christian nation in all of human history is the nation of Ethiopia. You have in the book of Acts the story of the Ethiopian eunuch. That Ethiopian who was baptized by Philip took the gospel to Ethiopia, and Ethiopia, it became a Christian nation. The first Christian nation was African. And yet, we are being told that Christianity is an aspect of whiteness. Not only is this terribly insulting to just about every Christian who happens to be African American, this denies the reality of history, and this is an attack on the Christian faith, because all of these aspects of whiteness, these evil aspects of whiteness that the National Museum of African American History and Culture are identifying, they are making the assumption that these things are bad. So again, they are making the assumption that Christianity is a negative thing. The last time I checked, desiring someone to know Christ and to receive the gift of everlasting life isn't something that should be restricted to any one skin color. This is something we should desire for all people, to know Christ, to have everlasting life with him. Well, I won't take too much time for the rest of these since we ourselves are almost out of time, but they identify things as planning for the future, aspects of beauty, holidays, competition, justice, and that's a big one. They're saying that it's an aspect of whiteness that justice is based on things like common law and respect for property and so forth. All of these things they identify as quote-unquote aspects of whiteness. Now, as I wrap this all up, first I want to say I hope I offended no one at all in my rant, that much of this was said tongue-in-cheek, but the point of all of this is that when you have an organization telling you how you should not act based on your color of skin, what aspects you should not adopt because, well, that's what the white people do. And these are things that are well and good, things like self-reliance, things like the family and a stable family environment, things like the Christian faith, when they're trying to tell you that these are aspects of whiteness with the assumption that you should not adopt these things because these are foreign to your culture. Well, that's just plain racist. So I am not one for cancel culture, but if I were, I would say it's time to cancel the National Museum on African American History and Culture because, well, they've shown themselves to be a bunch of racists. That is it for today. This wasn't too much about, faith and religion and that sort of thing, any deep theological conversation. So if you were looking for that today, I apologize. I don't do that much when it comes to rants, although we did focus a little bit on how the Christian faith is something that is for all people. But if you have any questions or comments, if anything, even if anything I said offended you and you would like to respond to that, please, you can contact Lloyd or myself through the feedback page on armedlutheranradio.us/feedback. We would love to hear from you. And again, if any of our listeners, if you're African American and you wanted to give your feedback on this, we would love to hear from you. Well, that's it for today. Christ blessings to you all, and we will talk to you next time.
John Bennett is the pastor at St. John's Lutheran Church in Willow Creek, Minnesota. For more information, visit stjohnswillowcreek.org. For show notes, be sure to visit our website at www.armedlutheran.us. Check out the Facebook page, The Armed Lutheran, or join our Facebook group, Fans of Armed Lutheran Radio. If you like what you hear, please leave us a comment on our feedback page at armedlutheran.us/feedback or a review on iTunes and let us know what you think. Thank you for listening to Armed Lutheran Radio, a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network.